Don't forget, ko-fi.com/stopwritingalone is a real simple way to show your support for what's going on here week after week. Hi, everyone. This is Nicole Rivera, and this is the Stop Writing Alone podcast for writers who are looking for their writing community. I know you want to find readers for your work, but I think your first step is to connect with other writers. That's what we're going to do here in the Stop Writing Alone podcast. We'll do writing prompts and other writing group activities, discover online writing communities, learn how to find local writing groups, or how to make your own. Join us as we explore, learn, and write. Hi, this is Nicole Rivera, and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie gave an incredible TED Talk called The Danger of a Single Story. And while all I really want to do for you this week is press play so that you can hear the entire talk, I will simply say I'm putting the link in the show notes so that you can go watch it, listen, and even if you've heard it before, I highly recommend going back because I have heard it a number of times and just went right back in, and it was so poignant right now as it seems that the singular stories that we have been told, that we have consumed, these are the things I feel continue to get in our way. So since I can't play the entire talk, I just want to give you a quote from her conclusion. It is this: stories matter. Many stories matter. Stories have been used to dispossess and malign, but stories can also be used to empower and to humanize. Stories can break the dignity of a people, but stories can also repair that broken dignity. The American writer Alice Walker wrote this about her Southern relatives who had moved to the North. She introduced them to a book about the Southern life that they had left behind. They sat around reading the book themselves, listening to me read the book, and a kind of paradise was regained. I would like to end with this thought, that when we reject the single story, when we realize that there is never a single story about any place, we can regain a kind of paradise. There are many reasons why this particular TED Talk speaks to me so deeply. One is, that Adichie is a storyteller and writer herself. Another is that it speaks directly to all that I love about story and how it builds empathy. But it only does so when we truly experience many stories of many different people and many different types of people. And if you listen to the whole talk, it's really quite wonderful how she not only tells us about the various assumptions that were made about her based on singular stories that people of America heard about her home country, but also that she tells us about all of the various assumptions she made about different people throughout her life and about different cultures based on the stories that she consumed. This is not a singular problem. This is a problem that happens all over. We are a product of our environment, and what we learn and what we consume informs us. And so with everything that's been going on in the world, and, very close to home here in America, I have been thinking about this talk and this idea, this danger of singular stories. And I was reminded of a panel that I went to at Book Expo, and I'm not sure if it was last year or a previous year, but it was a panel on diversity. I believe it was even run by someone from We Are Diverse Books, and the panel was filled, as you would imagine, with a diverse panel of authors. It was, we had white authors, black authors, some Asian American authors, and just the discussion came up at one point of one of the white authors asking for advice, saying, so what is it that I should do? Should I not write diverse characters and leave that to you? Or should I write more diverse characters and really employ all these sensitivity readers to make sure that I'm getting it right? Is that my role? Is that my job? And of course the advice came back. It's like, no one's telling you what you should and shouldn't be writing. Of course, sensitivity readers and anyone to read, to make sure that you are being representative and representing a culture correctly is advisable. But they said there's this really, really simple thing that anyone with privilege or anyone with a voice can be doing. And they said, and this doesn't just go for the white writers, this goes for anyone who's like finally gets a voice out there, gets popular, gets seen. When you are in that position, make sure that when you recommend other things to read, you are recommending to your audience a diverse panel of books to read. That they should be reading not just stories about characters that are just like them, but they should also be reading characters that are not like them, and they should be reading authors of different cultural backgrounds and different color and so on and so forth. And I was like, well, that's such a simple thing. And, it's something that we can all be doing, whether we're authors or published authors getting the spotlight or not. You just want to make sure that when you give a recommendation, you are recommending across the board and making sure that the world does not succumb to the danger of a single story. So to that end, I want to recommend for you some of my favorite Black authors. But before I do so, in full disclosure, I would like to let you know one of the reasons that I am so enamored by helping people see beyond the single story and feeling compelled to remind the world of the danger of the single story. And it is wildly personal to me. Because on the one hand, if you've been listening to Stop Writing Alone, because I never shut up about it, that for many years I was a New York City public school teacher. And many of my students, I dare say most of my students, were Black students. I can't see what's going on today without thinking of my kids, who are now grown adults and have babies of their own. And I know there are many stories. There is no singular story there. So many wonderful, beautiful people that are I mean, I've been worried about them so much in the past couple of weeks because so many of my former students are frontline workers working in hospitals, nurses, doctors, and, of course, law enforcement and EMTs. And my goodness, the list goes on. So wildly personal that, my heart is out there. But my heart is out there on the other side as well, because I'm not sure if I have mentioned this before on this podcast. But if I have, it's not been nearly as many times as I've mentioned that I was a public high school teacher. So the other end of it, and the other danger of the singular story, comes from the other huge hunk of my heart. And that is that my little brother is a police officer. And he is a white police officer. And at this time, I am aware that when he puts his uniform on, there are many people that are thinking of a singular story when they look at him. And I know how dangerous that can be. So, we must do whatever we can in our power to avoid the danger of the singular story. As writers, which are those of us here at the Stop Writing Alone podcast, we must continue to write all of our stories, spread them far and wide, so that everyone gets to hear all these different beautiful voices and stories and get to build their empathy by stepping into shoes of people of different color, cultures, experiences. And we need to read widely. We need to consume stories of different people, different cultures, different experiences, so that we can just try to understand where they're coming from, where everyone else is coming from. That's what I mean when I say they. Everyone but me thinks differently than I do, lives differently than I do. I can only begin to try to understand where they're coming from if I have access to their story. So, who are some of my current favorite Black authors that I'm reading right now? I wish I had cop authors for you. I don't have cop authors. What a disappointment I am. But here's some of my favorite Black authors that you really need to be reading if you are not already. And some of these names will be familiar, but if they're not, I would love you to read Tomi Adeyemi, who was in Pitch Wars with me back in 2016, and that novel that she submitted and worked on at the same time that I was working through Pitch Wars is doing quite well. So I'm sure you've heard about her. Angie Thomas. All right, I'm not going to talk about the books. I'm just going to give you the names. Jason Reynolds. Good thing I made that rule before mentioning Jason, because I could go on forever about him. Colson Whitehead. Oh, okay, I'm not going to gush. I'm just going to go. Classics. Maya Angelou. Toni Morrison. This is, novels, poetry. Langston Hughes. And right now on my nightstand is Saeed Jones's book, which I have not read yet, but has come so highly recommended that I cannot wait to get into it. And of course, Chimamanda Ngoyi Adichie, who did the TED Talk that I would love you to revisit right now. She is a writer, a storyteller. Goodness. And, she mentions in the excerpt that I quoted Alice Walker, another classic. The list goes on. So, that is all I have for you this week in terms of what we can be doing. Because there's 1,000 things we can be doing, and I'm sure you're getting advice left, right, and center. But in the realm of this writing podcast, we need to talk about the power of story, the power of words, and that is where my focus is. The danger of the singular story. So, we have a cure. Write more, read more, share more, ask more. Ask people to recommend their great stories that you haven't heard, that you haven't read, about cultures outside your own. So much fun. I love reading. You really can do a whole nother podcast and create a whole nother community called Stop Reading Alone and just go on and on and on. But that is it for this week. I hope you're all being safe and staying healthy still. We're still in this pandemic. And, I'm wishing the best for all of us. Happy writing, happy reading this week. I will see you next week, and thank you, as always, for listening.
Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the Stop Writing Alone podcast wherever you're listening to this episode today. Then connect with us on Facebook at Stop Writing Alone Facebook page or in the Stop Writing Alone with Nicole Rivera Facebook group. Check Instagram or Twitter where I'm at NV_Rivera to find links to our email newsletter. Happy writing. See you next week.